Hey everybody, this is actually take two. I have to do the entire PowerPoint again. Alright, so this isn't too bad. So this is digestion. Our new learning goal obviously is going to be to discover, student will be able to describe and understand the digestive system's anatomy and physiology or function. So this slide is referring a little bit to the function, the phases of digestion, which is going to be ingestion, which is how you end up eating things, a little hard with the beard. Movement, which is how your digestive system is going to take them and kind of bring them down and through the system out the other end. We're going to talk about mechanical and chemical digestion, sort of the thing that happens in the middle there. Absorption, which that takes us all the way back to Unit 1 when we talked about macromolecules and how our body's going to break down, that big juicy hamburger into lipids, carbs, and proteins. And then finally, elimination or defecation, which is all the stuff we didn't need. All right, so mechanical digestion is mostly, I think people would think about their teeth, right? You're chewing, you're tearing, you're grinding, you're mashing, you're mixing. But that also happens down in the stomach and just with the movement and the squishing and the squeezing and the churning of things. But that's mechanical. There's also chemical. So that's where we're actually taking those enzymes, which was also a Unit 1 thing way back in the day, quarter 1, before the coronavirus. And that's going to take those big long chains where we have those dehydration reactions, and it's going to break them apart now. It's going to rehydrate those, and it's going to put them into their individual pieces so that we can absorb them through the cell walls, get them into our bloodstream, and distribute them throughout our body where they need to go. So it is organized in a certain way. It's basically a tube with two ends. Thankfully, we're not like certain worms where it's just one end where you eat and then what you don't need comes back out that same tube. Fortunately, we're not like that. So there are certain structures here, and I've got all these tools available to me. I've got the highlighter. Oh no, I want a pen. Should have brought a mouse. So we've got this green one here, which is our mouth, and I believe green is our mouth. Yeah. So here's the mouth, and the pharynx is the back of the mouth. That's what the doctor's checking out when they say, open your mouth and say, ah. They're looking to see that your uvula back there lifts up evenly on both sides. It doesn't do this like off-kilter thing. And then the esophagus is green, which is what I was kind of going for. That's your throat. And that's the tube that is for food to go down to the stomach, which is here in red. I think it's going to do lines for me. There's your stomach. And then the stomach connects to the small intestine, which is pink. And I wonder if I can move me. Nope. It can't move me. Anyway, so we got pink. And then the large intestine is in brown here. And then the rectum is the very end. It's kind of a holding space, which apparently is pointing to me. Cool. All right, the mouth. Primary job is to mechanically break down the food, but we do actually start chemical digestion here with amylase from the saliva. It's going to help break down starches. And you've probably heard of this thing called the epiglottis, one of those words I think I latched onto in high school, which is kind of cool. The epiglottis is this flap in the back. That's what you can be mad at when you go to drink water and you swallow wrong, right? There's two tubes here, and you don't want water or solids going down into your actual trachea and into your lungs. Right? That could be life-threatening. So that epiglottis, when you swallow, is supposed to be closed and kind of cover that hole. This was the hole. It's supposed to cover the hole to your trachea, and then the food sloughs off into the esophagus and goes into the stomach rather than down the hole and into the trachea. So the esophagus, moving on our way down, we've got the green there, about 20 centimeters long. That's not many football fields for the American children here in our units. Maybe about, not much of a washing machine either. Ooh, 2 baseballs high. I think that's about right. 2 baseballs. That's a perfect American unit of measurement. Functions of the esophagus. We want smooth sailing for our food going down. You don't want a dry throat, so it secretes mucus. And here's the first time you're going to see this cool word called peristalsis. So peristalsis is a key word you need to know. It's the name for the movement of the muscles in the tube that are going to kind of squeeze the food on down. So if you got a big lump of food here and it squeezes it, it's going to push it. As it squeezes it that direction, that's called peristalsis. Your esophagus should not have any acid in it, but it is connected to the stomach. So what that's called is called heartburn, the basic word. The medical terminology is GERD, or gastroesophageal reflux disease. We just like to use big fancy words. Gastro is stomach, esophageal means esophagus, reflux means like a back, like a reflex, it came back, and disease is just, it's disease. So what we did is we gave it a big fancy name. We could charge you for it, I suppose. The stomach is going to be where a lot of protein digestion happens. And it needs to be very acidic for that to happen. That's where pepsin, pepsinogen, and actin, I believe, are the enzymes that will help break down the proteins into the small pieces so we can absorb them. And it's pretty tough. You got to chew your food well in order to absorb protein nicely. You can't just swallow a whole piece of meat and expect your stomach to squeeze for 4 hours and have that broken into all the individual proteins. So chewing your meat is very important. The acid also has the secondary benefit of killing bacteria and viruses, which is a pretty sweet combo. It helps us from eating bad meat, things like that. So food found in the stomach at the end is called chyme. So if you've thrown up, you get this kind of horrible acidic, burny thing. That's kind of halfway between the food you chewed up and chyme. If you still see food when you throw up, that just means the stomach wasn't quite done churning and turning it into this chyme. So the small intestine. The amazing thing about the small intestine is it has these features that increase surface area. So if it was just a tube, right, like a hose, it would just have this flat wall. And that flat wall would only have a pretty minimal surface area, let's say a meter. But if we were to fold upwards and down and make these little things called villi, now we've gone from 1 meter of surface area to 2 meters of surface area. And if on top of each of those cells we take and we make little fingers on top of those, fingers is kind of what villi means, now we've got like these undulations on top too. So now we've gone from that 2 meters bonus to now like 3 meters of total absorption area. So we can pack more absorbent surface into less space. Now this is 7 meters long, which is, that's getting close to almost 1/10 of a football field, or several washers and dryers lined up in a row. So yeah, villi is an important word. That's the name for these broad undulations. And then microvilli are on each of those individual cells. They have these little villi that increase the surface area even more. This is where almost all of the food we eat is going to be absorbed. So you notice these blue, all these veins are coming from here. It's very rich with blood vessels because it's absorbing all the nutrients, the vitamins, the minerals, the carbs, the proteins, the lipids, all the water, the vitamins. And then it's going to go to the liver, and the liver is going to make sure there's no toxins in it. And it's going to send it out to the kidneys and the rest of the body to actually get used. And we'll talk a little bit more about digestive enzymes in a second. Large intestine, 1.5 meters long. That's like 2 washers. Oh no, I can't go back. Oh good, we still have some large intestine here. Alright, so large intestine, its primary job is to absorb more water. And it helps concentrate the wastes. I imagine most of you are familiar with the end product of the large intestine. One of the more important things that is becoming very apparent in research lately is how important the bacterial colonies are in here. So there's more bacterial cells and fungal cells in here than there are cells in your entire body. And research is showing that they have an important symbiotic relationship with our own bodies in terms of our immunity, how sick we get when we get sick, certain autoimmune diseases where our body attacks itself. And those are the most amazing. There are these diseases out there where they think, this disease can't be cured, your body's attacking itself, these drugs barely work, but there's something. And they started doing these things called fecal transplants. Now that sounds pretty disgusting. But what they found is if they take somebody who has a really symbiotic, great biota, like big, not big. They've got an awesome set of bacteria, and they give you that awesome set of bacteria that can cure those diseases with over 90% success rate, which is just insane, right? We went from not having any idea what was causing it, not being able to cure it, to over 90% success rate by literally taking someone else's feces and transplanting them into you. And there's a particular way to do it. Don't go out and do this with your friends. It's kind of gross. Anyway, so moving on. Can't emphasize the importance of your gut health enough. We talked about that earlier on in the year too. Just to link back to it, we talked about kimchi and kefir and yogurt and all these great things that Americans largely don't partake in very much, but certain other cultures do. So try to take good care of your gut bacteria. So accessory organs. This big green thing here is called the Gall Bladder. Nice and still in green. There's a fun mnemonic that goes along with that if you end up in medical school. It's fat, flatulent females in their 40s. So typically the presentation would be a woman, just overweight. She has a lot of gas, and she's about 40 years old. So the pain comes from, I can see in the video here, this like lower right area, just below your rib cage is typically where the gallbladder is, and they'll eat something like Kentucky Fried Chicken, something high in fat, and they'll get this sharp pain. And what happens is you get these little stones in here, and the stones can come out, and they can cause a blockage in this path of the enzyme that's going to help the digestion happen. If it happens high up, it's probably of little consequence. They'll just have this thing called steatorrhea. Sounds like diarrhea, right? But steatorrhea is poop that has a lot of fat in it, so it really floats and it doesn't like link together well. It's just really oily. And you know, people ignore stuff all the time. If the blockage happens here, however, before, this is my favorite ampulla in the whole digestive system, called the ampulla of Vader, because it reminds me of Darth Vader. If it happens here, it blocks the digestive enzymes from the pancreas. So that can cause the pancreas to kind of start digesting itself from the inside out, which is really bad. You're not going to digest your food and get the carbs and lipids and stuff you need. That can be an acute cause of very sharp pain and can lead to your untimely demise. So definitely get that checked out if you're having pain around there. And remember, fat, flatulent females in their 40s. So I think that about covers the pancreas. There's another slide for that one, and the gallbladder for now. Liver detoxifies. It helps make the bile and stores it in the gallbladder. Bile, so everyone's done the experiment back in elementary school where you take the fat and the water and you put the two together. And what does it do? It forms these little things called micelles, which are these fatty globules, right? So how does our body take care of that? You can't digest something that's sticking to a globule. Well, it has to dissolve it, right? You would add something like a soap that would help disperse and break up those fatty things and mix it with the water. So our body does that via bile. So it lets the bile out of the gallbladder, and it breaks up those fatty clumps into smaller pieces so that we can absorb the fats. And then the liver takes out any toxins, including alcohols and poisons, as best as it can. Gallbladder, back to you. So it stores the bile, lets it in there. Fatty diets can lead to gallstones, which we kind of talked about. The pancreas, we didn't even spend another couple minutes on that. We just talked about a unit or two ago about the endocrine function of the pancreas, which is like insulin and glucagon in helping regulate blood sugar. But now the other part, the exocrine function, and it's exocrine because this tube is kind of on the outside of our body, right? It's not injecting it into our bloodstream anyway. So it injects these digestive enzymes that are going to help break down our fats, carbs, and proteins into the smallest little Lego bricks they can be. And then those Lego bricks are going to get absorbed into our bloodstream and sent around the body. I think we're nearly done here. Now it's quiz time. So we've got, you can play along if you want. You can pause the video. On a sheet of paper, write the name of each colored organ. Green, red, pink, brown, purple, green, and yellow. So they even got the accessory ones in here. You can pause the video. How'd you do? So esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. Good job.